It's not without some trepidation that I engage on this paper. It tackles one of the most difficult issues, and an issue which cannot really be tackled in a 1-hour lecture. It also doesn't, I don't know if it comes up, it proposes certain tracks to follow. It doesn't quite come up with ready-made solutions, but this is a workshop. And given the limitations of time, not everything will be developed as it should be. Some things will be taken for granted or can be explained later in the discussion. So let me start. Hegel and Freud. Hegel and Freud, so it would seem, have nothing in common. There is everything to oppose them. On the one hand, the speculative philosopher of absolute spirit who encompassed in his system all spheres of being, logic, nature, and spirit alike, and who is reputedly the most obscure and difficult in the entire grand philosophical tradition. On the other hand, a man of medical formation, a therapist, who in all his work took the clinical practice.
The microphone?
Closer? Okay, sorry.
You know, the voice is
missing,
as you would have said in your book.
Nothing more, just the voice. Okay. So, on the other hand, Freud, who was a man of medical formation, who in all his work took the clinical practice as his guideline and only gradually extended some insights into psychic life to ever larger circles of culture, civilization, and history. On the one hand, not only a philosopher, but a philosopher par excellence, the paradigmatic image of a philosopher, who managed to encapsulate in his system all the themes and achievements of the metaphysical tradition. On the other hand, a man of natural science, who adamantly opposed philosophy as such, and even saw one of the big dangers for psychoanalysis in the attempts to turn it into a new philosophical current. On the one hand, not only a German, but seemingly a German par excellence, a model of German spirit, or even the Prussian state philosopher, as the adage goes. On the other hand, a Jew, who already in his young days experienced the pressures of anti-Semitism and eventually, despite his fame, had to finish his days in exile, his books burned by a regime which, most ironically, was evoking Hegel. And finally, on the one hand, a philosopher who, more than anyone else in the history of philosophy, relied on the powers of reason, concept, and knowledge. And on the other hand, someone who, more than anyone else, took his cue from something that inherently escapes these powers or presents their fissure. And this fissure forms the very object of psychoanalysis, the entities such as the unconscious or the drives. In this last point, there is something that strangely connects them. They both present a certain excess, which makes that when one invokes their names, the temperature rises. It seems that there is no way one could speak about one or the other from the point of view of neutral, objective, and impartial knowledge, to allow them a just place in the gallery of great minds, as if both, although for opposed reasons, present something that the established knowledge, what Lacan economically called the university discourse, cannot quite swallow. Both tend to produce either zealous followers or equally zealous enemies. They still detain the capacity to provoke passions, although the nature of their excess pertains to opposite reasons. Hegel, the vintage university professor, if there ever was one, with the excess of knowledge best epitomized by his claim to absolute knowledge. And the moment a knowledge raises a claim to be absolute, this is a neuralgic point that no university discourse can digest if it is to retain its demeanor of neutrality and objectivity. Freud, with the opposite claim to an errant truth, with no guarantee and no usual verification, which separates him from academic credentials. In brief, the absolute knowledge and the unconscious, two boundaries of knowledge, the upper and the lower one, the knowledge which strives to overstep its limits by its claim for the absolute. On the other hand, a hole in knowledge, a slippage of knowledge, where desires, drives, symptoms, fantasies start flocking in. If the absolute knowledge and the unconscious still function as the unplaceable excesses, what could be their link?